Hey guys, welcome to the very first episode of the podcast. I'm Jade and today I'm joined by Bish, who you probably already know from his amazing landscape photography and probably some of the craziest travel pics I've ever seen. So firstly, for anyone who may not know you, Bish, do you want to introduce yourself and tell everyone what you do?
Sure. So hi, my name is Bish. I'm from Inview. So I've been doing photography and videography for about 16 years now. So I do photography, videography, aerial, virtual tours. I've got an art store and now with opening up this brand new studio, I'll also be offering studio hire as well.
Okay, so basically ever since you've gone back from your trip from Iceland and Norway, from what I've heard, everyone's been asking to talk about the behind the scenes. So that's what we're going to be doing today. Basically, this is a mini series breaking out your whole trip, the goods, the bads, and everything in between. So to begin, where did the idea for Iceland and Norway even begin?
So I've been to Norway in 2014, 2015. I went to Tromsø and Bergen. So that's way up north. Well, Tromsø's way up north and Bergen's down south. Luckily got to see the Northern Lights then as well. So it was always my dream to return. So I had plans that I would go back to Norway. Mm-hmm. And at one point, the plan was actually just to go to Norway. But then I thought, I'm going all this way, I might as well add something else. So then I just started looking, okay, well, what countries are around Norway? So I decided that let's go to Iceland. I've never been to Iceland, so why not add that one? So then that's how this all came about, where I then decided to go to Norway and Iceland.
That's cool. So the first time you saw the Northern Lights, did you take any photographs then?
I did, and because it was back in 2014, that was just a couple of years after I started my business. So it was really when I was really starting out with photography. And yes, I did take some really nice shots, but as soon as I came back and ever since returning from that trip, I've always thought I need to go back and take better photos.
Yeah.
So fast forward 10 odd years, I was like, okay, I'm a better photographer now and I've got better gear now. I need to go back and take better photos. So then that was the aim, is that I need to go back to that part of the world and take better photos.
You know what would be so fun? Can you insert the two images here of like your before and after?
That would be a great idea. So look at the screen now.
So you mentioned you've already been to Norway before. So what made this like the why now moment? Like what made this the trip?
So because I had been there before and I only got to experience Tromsø and Bergen, I really wanted to go a bit more remote.
Yeah.
And I actually just found this area called the Lofoten Islands, or I think it's pronounced Lofoten. Mm-hmm. And I actually just randomly found that on both Google and social media.
Okay.
And the photos just looked magical, something out of like a fairy tale. And as soon as I saw these photos, I just thought, I have to go there. I just have to go. Yep. So then I made it my mission that I'm going to plan this trip. And then I started looking into it and planning it, obviously. And then I just thought, this time when I go, I'm just only going to focus on that one area of Norway, which is the Lofoten Islands.
Like a follow-up question from that, but did you prefer going to just the one location, or do you like when you traveled to more locations and got different places?
I do prefer to experience a lot of different areas. So the first time I went, it was part of a bigger trip where I went to 6 other countries.
Wow, yeah.
And then each city, I was only there for a few nights. So I do like to experience basically living out of a backpack and experiencing a lot of different cities. So that's generally how I like to do things. But then this time I thought, okay, I'm going to do it differently now. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to, and it was actually very short, and it's shorter than what people expect. I think it was only 3 nights in Iceland and 6 nights in Norway. So it actually wasn't a very long trip considering how long it took to get there. Mm-hmm. So, but when I did go to Norway, I was literally only focused and interested in the Lofoten Islands. So I just focused on that one area.
Yeah. Wow, that must be a jam-packed itinerary, which we'll get into. I think you mentioned it, but in case you didn't, for people that don't know, where are the Lofoten Islands specifically?
So if you look at the map of Norway, on the western coast, if you go down about a third of the way down, you'll see this little arm of islands just sticking out of the mainland. That's the Lofoten Islands. So it's a bit more remote, and that's what I wanted to do. So if you do want to see the Northern Lights, you need to go as remote as possible, away from all the city lights and all the light pollution.
Yeah.
And the Lofoten Islands is one of the very Instagrammable, first of all, Instagrammable just landscapes in general, and second of all, with the Northern Lights as a backdrop.
Yeah.
So I wanted to go remote, and then as I mentioned, I found them by chance. So that's actually where they're located.
With timing with the Northern Lights, like, is that hard to coordinate? Did you know? How did you figure that out? Or is that on Instagram and online as well?
So the first thing you need to know with the Northern Lights is the Northern Lights, they're actually particles that come to us from the sun. And these, and they actually happen 24/7. So if you look at the map of Norway, if you go down about a third of the way down, you'll see this little arm of islands just sticking out of the mainland. That's the Lofoten Islands. So it's a bit more remote, and that's what I wanted to do. So if you do want to see the Northern Lights, you need to go as remote as possible, away from all the city lights and all the light pollution. Yeah. And So these particles are always hitting our atmosphere. We just don't see them because, first of all, well, if you're living in Australia, you won't see them because you need to be near the poles. And second of all, because, for example, during the day, because it's so bright, you're not going to see them. So they're actually hitting the atmosphere 24/7. But the sun is actually on an 11-year cycle. And every 11 years, the solar storms peak.
Yeah.
So the first thing you need to do is look, you can get lucky or unlucky depending on when you go. So if you do want to increase your chances, the best thing you would do is time your trip when the sun is at its peak, which is every 11 years.
Wow. You get a once in a decade opportunity.
Yeah, so when I did go in 2014, that was at the peak back then. So then I timed forward 11 years, which was now. So I was actually at the tail end of that peak.
Wow.
So it was basically now or never. So I thought, okay, if I want to go, this is the solar peak now. It's at the end of the solar peak. So that was the first thing, is you need to know when to go. Second thing is that you obviously need darkness. So you need to go during the winter. And up above the Arctic Circle, during the winter, the sun never actually rises.
Huh. Wow. So it's dark all day.
It's, the twilight sort of.
Yeah,
yes.
like a dusk sort of thing. Yeah.
So it's basically the sun will come just close to the horizon, but it actually won't rise. It'll just sit there. So that's where you get the twilight, dusk type, feel for like maybe even 3 hours.
Huh.
And then all of a sudden at like 2 p.m, it's pitch black.
Wow, okay,
Yeah.
that's a bit scary.
But yeah, it's very eerie. But that's actually the best time to go and see the Northern Lights because it's so dark and you have so much of darkness hours. That's when you need to go to see the Northern Lights. And then the last thing is the weather. You need to be very lucky, and ideally you don't want the moon, but that's not make or break.
Yeah.
But then you definitely don't want clouds. If you have a very cloudy day and it's overcast, you're not going to see anything. So the weather's the one thing you can't control, the others you can. So as long as you have clear skies, fingers crossed, you will get lucky and see the Northern Lights.
And this sounds like a huge trip. So I'm curious, how much planning went into this? And well, obviously, as you've said, you've got the weather, you've got timing. Walk me through it.
Well, as you can all imagine, a trip like this takes a lot of planning. And I did plan this for maybe 6 odd months. And I had Excel spreadsheets going on.
Can we attach those?
Yeah, maybe. To plan this, it takes a lot of research. So as I mentioned, the first thing is the timing. So I picked the right year.
Yeah.
I then picked the right month. In terms of month, you can get anywhere between maybe August, September to maybe March, April.
Yeah.
Is when it gets dark the most. But I wanted to go in winter. I wanted to see snow, and I wanted snow to be the foreground in my photos. So I decided to go. It would have to be either December, January. So I ended up picking January. So that's the first thing. Once you pick all that, you then need to find flights and accommodation. Now, the issue with me is because I like to do things unlike anyone else, it's not just a matter of finding a return flight to Norway or something. It was very specific route. So I flew into Reykjavik in Iceland.
Okay.
And then from there, even though to get from Iceland to Norway, it's literally across a ditch. It's the equivalent of Australia to New Zealand, which is only a 3-hour flight.
Yeah.
But to get from Iceland to where I was going, because I'm not going to a main city, as I mentioned, I'm going to the Lofoten Islands, it's a remote. It actually took 3 flights to get there.
3 flights?
Yeah. Even though you're just
Wow.
crossing the ditch.
Yeah.
So basically all my flights were one ways.
Wow.
One way to Reykjavik in Iceland, then one way from Reykjavik to Oslo, from Oslo to Bodo, or I think it's pronounced Buda, and then from Buda to Svolvær, which is in the Lofoten Islands. Finding all those flights was a bit tricky, and then you have to, obviously, because they're all one ways, you have to plan the flights so that you can line them up in terms of timing.
Yeah.
So that you get to an airport, you then have a couple of hours transit, because there you have to actually exit the airport, grab your bags, and then recheck in.
Wow.
So you need to give yourself a couple of hours to do all that.
Yeah.
So there's no, so it's basically called self-check-in.
Right.
So finding all those flights was a bit tricky.
Yeah.
Then finding the accommodation in all the different places that I wanted to stay in. So that was the first thing, is flights and accommodation. Once I get that all locked in and I know, okay, these are the dates and I pay for those, the easy part comes.
Yeah.
Which is then, okay, what activities am I going to do? And I actually only did a couple of activities because I was basically hiring a car and just driving around.
Yeah.
And just driving in the middle of nowhere and scouting locations for my photography, because this was obviously a photography trip.
And you want to leave time for that, of course. Yeah.
So I planned a couple of activities, and then I had to hire a car, And then with hiring a car, they ended up giving me an electric vehicle.
Fun.
But I've never driven an electric vehicle, so I actually ended up changing it. And I said, no, I actually want a petrol vehicle. And they looked at me funny. They're like, why would you want... Anyway, so I was like, because this is a photography trip, I'm driving remote. I'm driving into the middle of nowhere in pitch black. I don't know when I'm going to find a charging station. And
be able to wait.
Yeah, and I was like, so first of all, where am I going to find a charging station? Second of all, I'm not going to sit there for a few hours waiting to charge the battery.
Yeah.
I need petrol and I need to fill up in 5 minutes and go.
Yeah.
So like, no, I need a petrol car. So that was the next thing, is just make sure to get a petrol car. Although I did end up seeing that there were a lot of charging stations, but you got to sit there and wait.
Interesting though, because like over here we don't have as many. So very interesting.
Yeah.
That's a good story.
Yeah.
Did you drive the electric vehicle at all? Or?
So I ended up getting a hybrid.
Yeah. Yes.
It was the first time I've even driven a hybrid as well, which was interesting because when you turn the car on, it's on. I didn't even know it was on because it's
quiet.
Because it's so quiet, and that's when the electric thing starts. And then I was reversing out the parking spot, and when you're doing reverse, it was on electric. But I didn't even know. So I'm pressing start, stop about 10 times. I'm thinking, why is this thing not working?
Yeah.
So that was an interesting experience driving a hybrid car.
Yeah.
So then once all that's done, I then started working on my spreadsheet, thinking, okay, where am I going to spend all my time? Where am I going to find all my location spots, and then figure out where I'm going to go from there.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, cool. And well, you mentioned very specific places and there are very specific choices there. So why those places?
So basically, I chose those places purely on Google and socials.
Okay.
And then because I just saw them and I thought this is a stunning landscape, and it would make a beautiful backdrop for the Northern Lights as well.
Yeah.
So basically, in a nutshell, it was purely and as simple as I saw these photos online and I was like, I have to go there. I don't know where that is. I'm going there.
Yep.
So that ended up being so in Iceland, I actually only really went to southeast Iceland, which is a city called Hofen, or I think it's pronounced Hufen. So I flew into Reykjavik, but then I had to drive there, which is the southeast corner of Iceland. And basically, I only really wanted to focus on two places, which was the Glacier Lagoon and a mountain called Vestrahorn, which been in a few movies.
Wow.
And it's a stunning mountain.
They sound epic.
Yeah, it is. My aim was to actually go back there for sunrise photos, for sunset photos, and then for night photos with the Northern Lights. So I was basically just going to the same place over and over. That's why I thought I'm only going to that one place in Iceland. So I didn't really get to see the rest of Iceland. I only went back to Reykjavik basically just to chill for the night before I then flew to Norway.
Right.
So then when I went to Norway, as I mentioned, I was only focusing on the Lofoten Islands. But with the Lofoten Islands, so that's basically a stretch of islands that there's about 15 odd cities or villages, fishing villages. They're all fishing villages.
Wow, yeah.
Obviously, I didn't have time to check them all out. But I went to Henningsvær, Svolvær, Hamnøy, Rein. I think that's it. So just those four. So that was my aim to check out those four cities. And again, I just saw those photos online. And then I actually used Google Street View to place myself there and to look at the screen and look around 360 as if I was actually there and place myself there. And that was actually me planning and scouting where am I going to go to shoot the Northern Lights.
Yeah.
Because to shoot the Northern Lights, you obviously have to face north.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I would then say, okay, I'm going to go to that city because it looks beautiful. But okay, now I want to shoot the Northern Lights. I need to face north. So that I would then use Street View and use the cursor and move the screen around and look at the compass and make sure that, okay, what does north look like? Is it actually worth going there? Is that the view I want, north? If not, I'll just scrap it and pick a different location. And that's how I actually started planning all the different places to go to choose my my short list for the photo ops, which is very hard because, as you can imagine, there's a lot of stunning places in Iceland and Norway. And I had to, because it was a very short trip, in 9 nights, I had to pick which spots I'm actually going to go to and focus on to take photos.
Sounds like it's calling for another trip
Yeah.
trip very soon. I'm curious with that. Do most of your trips, do you use Google Maps and do they involve that much detail in finding those locations?
Yes, I'd use Google Maps actually to plan my whole driving experience, and so I actually used Google Maps offline mode.
Oh, Oh, okay.
So before I go, I can actually download the map on my phone on the app on Google Maps. So that way, when you get there, you're not actually using data.
Yeah.
And you can actually, because I actually had to use the navigator to get to everywhere because I've never been there, obviously.
Yeah.
So when I punch in an address and say, Google, take me there, I'm not using data. So I have to actually rely on offline mode. So I had to download the maps before I left.
Yeah.
So I was relying on Google Maps to navigate me to all these different places. And then obviously during the planning, I used Google Maps and Street View to plan, to get an idea of what is it that I'm actually going to be looking at, to actually compose my shot. So I was using Google Street View to look at, okay, now I'm looking north. I've got this mountain, for example. What does it look like facing north? Is it going to work, yes or no? And I basically planned my photo and my composition based on Google Maps and Street View.
That's so interesting. Like I'd never think of that. Like that's so smart. And well, it sounds like this whole trip certainly has a bit of a budget. So could you, like with your spreadsheets, walk me through what your budget and the costs look like?
Yeah, so
the question we all want to know is
yeah, as you'd all guess, it's not very cheap to go to that part of the world. My budget actually was 10 to 12K for this whole trip, and that's obviously for one person. My plan was to stick to that budget. I ended up paying roughly 15 to 16K, but that was only because, first of all, I upgraded one return trip to business class, which was $1,000.
Yeah.
I then spent a little bit more on food than I expected.
Always happens.
Because food there is not cheap. Yeah. I ended up adding a couple of extra activities, which we'll cover later.
Yeah. And
then the last thing was, silly me decided to catch the plane wearing shorts and a t-shirt, thinking that I just want to be comfortable on the plane. And of course, I froze on the plane.
Yeah.
So on the way there, I transited in Doha and Heathrow. When I got to Doha, I thought, okay, I'm freezing. I need to buy some clothes.
Yeah.
So actually, in the airport, I actually went shopping for clothes. So I actually bought a hoodie and trackies and new shoes, just so that I could be warm on the plane. So I went a little bit over budget, but for a trip like this, and again, coming back to my point earlier, is I did do those very random one-way flights everywhere, which did add to the cost. If you just do let's just say you focus on Norway and you do a return trip to Norway, it would be much cheaper. You might be looking at, I think it was about $2,500 return flights to Norway. Whereas I spent $5,500 on flights, mainly because of the way I did it. So I did pay a bit extra. But so if you did do a return trip just to one city, you could do it all for maybe 7 or 8K, and that's just per person. But with accommodation, if you're doing a family, you're saving a bit. You're saving on the accommodation.
Well, it's truly like a once in a lifetime or once in a decade trip. So you go all out, don't you?
Yeah, that's right.
It's cool. I think it's also good to talk about budget, and I think that's a very interesting point. Okay, so I understand like the trip took like around about 9 nights. I think you stayed, but how long was it like overall? I mean, like you're doing so many one-way flights and things like that. Like, yeah.
Yeah, so I was actually there for 9 nights, but I was away for 13 nights.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, because
I was not expecting that.
Yeah, so it actually took a night to get there, a night to come back, and then I ended up getting stuck in Dubai for a night on the way back. So the whole trip was 13 nights.
Right, yeah.
But my stay there was 9 nights. But it actually took, so the flight there to Reykjavik in Iceland was 30 and a half hours.
Wow.
So that is a very long...
What did you do on the plane?
Just watch movies.
Yeah.
I can't sleep on planes, so I just watch the movies the whole way. So it took 30 and a half hours to get to Reykjavik. Mm-hmm. But then when I got there, because I mentioned I was actually staying in southeast Iceland, which is on the opposite side to Reykjavik, it then took me over 6 hours to drive there.
Wow.
So it actually took me 30 and a half hours to get there. So by the time I got there, got out, got my bags, got my car and drove, the whole from door to door was like 38 hours.
Wow.
So I was obviously exhausted by the time I got there, but in true Bish fashion, when I got there, I checked in, got back in the car, drove out in the middle of nowhere and started taking photos.
What was your first impression of Iceland? Because in your notes, you say literally endless snow plains, glaciers and pitch black roads. And you're also mentioning how there's like basically no sunlight, which sounds terrifying. So tell me more about it.
Yeah, so when I got to Iceland, and Iceland actually sits a bit below Norway, well, where I went to Norway, which is the Lofoten Islands. So it sits below the Arctic Circle. So in in Iceland, you actually do get sun.
Okay.
But you only get sun for a couple of hours and then it sets again. So I did get some sun in Iceland. But basically, as soon as you drive out of the city from Iceland, it's just literally endless snow. All you see is snow and just one road. So that all you can see is just endless snow everywhere.
Yep.
And then at night, it's just pitch black. There's no street lights.
Yeah.
There's no sun. There's no moon. There's nothing. So it is very eerie driving around at night, but you know, it's a surreal experience.
So you're just like relying on your headlights, basically.
Basically, yeah.
Did you see many other people on the road, or is it like quiet, like eerie quiet? You know what I mean?
At night, there was actually no one on the roads.
It's a horror movie.
Yeah, and there, when I was driving back from Southeast Iceland back to Reykjavik for my final night, I left Southeast Iceland at about 6 a.m. I was driving for about 3 hours before I saw another car.
Wow.
So I was literally driving for 3 hours, not a single soul in sight, not a street light, nothing. Nothing. It was just pitch black.
Were there any animals?
I did not see any animals. It was literally nothing. It was just me and my headlights
So
for
eerie.
3 hours. And I think it's because at that time of year, which is heavy winter, and it's cold and there's very minimal daylight hours, people probably don't work. They're on holidays. They're in bed.
Yeah.
They wake up later and they're on holidays. So people were probably still in bed. Even at like 9 a.m., it was pitch black at 9 a.m.
Right,
and people
yeah.
are probably still in their houses, which is probably why I saw no one on the road.
What did you do on your like 3 hours of, just driving by yourself? You listen to music, like?
I tried to listen to the radio, and being in a foreign country, that's also tricky because...
Is it in English?
No, it wasn't even in English. So you're listening to non-English music. You're listening to non-English DJs.
Yep.
So I have no idea what I'm listening to. And then because I'm out remote in the middle of nowhere, I actually lost signal for most of the drive.
Scary.
Yeah. So when I'm in the cities, I can listen to the music. But then as soon as I drive like half an hour out of the city, it was just
Nothing.
radio silence.
That would be very creepy. Okay, and you mentioned that you were so cold on the flight, so you literally re-equipped at an airport. So I guess overall, was it as cold as you expected?
It actually wasn't as cold as I expected. So the first time when I went to Norway, because I was actually right up north at the tip of Norway and even in the Barents Sea, which is basically the North Pole.
Okay.
So it got to like -20
Far out.
on that first trip. But on this trip, it was ranging anywhere from, I think the coldest was about -10 up until about +5. So it wasn't as cold as I expected. So I actually did pack a lot of thermals, which I didn't even really need. I maybe wore them a couple of times on this trip. The only one time was when I did snowmobiling was with the wind chill. It probably got to like -20.
Yeah.
But other than that, it wasn't as cold as I expected.
Good, only -10 degrees. No, that's cool. Okay, so yeah, we're getting into the good question and I feel like what we're building up to. So when did the Northern Lights actually appear? And at that point, did you think you were going to get a proper display of it during the trip?
So I actually got to see them the first night.
Wow.
Which was very lucky.
Yeah.
But they only appeared for like about 10-15 minutes. So it was a very quick show. So this was my first night in Iceland. It was a very faint show, and it was a very weak display. And what I saw was, and because Iceland sits a bit further south than the Lofoten Islands up in the Arctic Circle, so the further south you go, if you do see the lights and they're very weak, you're going to see them on the horizon.
Okay.
And because I went to Vestrahorn, which is a mountain, so I could barely make it out behind the mountain.
Yeah.
So I could see it. And I only saw them for about 10-15 minutes, then they disappeared. So I was very lucky that I got there when I did, because as soon as I got there, they came out.
You had a glimpse of hope.
Yeah. So it did give me hope, but the weather forecast for Iceland was very cloudy for the few nights that I was there. So I knew that I shouldn't really expect much from Iceland, which is okay because my main focus on this trip was Norway.
Yeah.
And my main Northern Lights experience was Norway. So that's what I was banking on. So anything in Iceland was just going to be a bonus.
So you got some photos from that one?
I did, yeah.
See that attached. And I think you mentioned this and touched on this before, but you mentioned that there's a random conversation you overheard at dinner where people were talking about solar storms coming in a few days. Did that instantly kind of become the next thing you were thinking about for when you went to Norway?
Yes, so this conversation I overheard was actually the key to me rejigging my itinerary, which I spent so much time putting together.
Wow.
So on my first night in Iceland, I was having dinner in the hotel, and there was a group of about 10 people who would have been photographers on a photography trip, having dinner at the table next to me. So they were discussing all things photography, and they must have just come back from a shoot. And I overheard the tour guide or the tour leader telling one of the other guys, so he's looking at his apps on his phone, and I overheard him telling him that a major solar storm has just erupted on the sun.
Wow.
And so the northern lights, as I mentioned earlier, are particles that come to us from the sun, and they increase when there's a big solar storm on the sun, or what we call a coronal mass ejection, or CMEs.
Okay.
So he was looking at this app, and mind you, I've looked at all these apps in my research before my trip, and there was activity expected, but all these apps are so contradictory to each other. So he must have been looking at some really high-tech app because what I overheard him saying did not match what I was looking at. So he was looking at his phone, telling the other guy that a really big storm has just erupted on the sun. And when a solar storm erupts on the sun, it actually takes a couple of days or a few days for it to travel and hit the Earth. So he was then saying that in a few days' time, we're going to get some good aurora activities. So as soon as I heard that, my heart just jumped. And I was like, all right, this is key for me, because now I've got secondary information that there's a big storm on its way. And in a few days' time, so long as the weather is clear, we're going to get some good aurora displays. So I then went back to my room and I started looking at my itinerary. What can I move around so that during that expected solar storm that's coming, I can be at my preferred location for my Northern Lights photos. So I did a bit of moving around and playing around with my itinerary to make sure that, and we will discuss in the next episode that he was actually 100% on the money.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad I overheard that conversation.
Amazing. Okay, I feel like that's like the perfect place to end part one, because now we've got the setup, like the anticipation, and of that solar storm coming, and of course the first peek at the Northern Lights. So next episode we'll get into Iceland itself, the photography side of things, and some more of those chaos stories with the rejigged itinerary. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening, and tune in to part 2.